Hello, everyone. I am super excited to have my guest on today. Miss Brandee Hicks is here with me. She has been a dear friend of mine for almost over 10 years, I think, Brandee.
Almost, yeah.
And we used to work together going way back in my public health days. Brandee is a public health professional consultant as well as an disabilities inclusion advocate. And I am so excited for her to be talking about the work that she does as a disabilities inclusion advocate and really give us a background on how she got started. So, Brandee, I'm going to toss over you. Tell us more about yourself and how you got started in this work.
Sure thing. So the first, I want to say thank you so much, Tiffany, for inviting me here to talk to you today. I'm so excited for our conversation. So yes, I am a disability inclusion advocate as well as a blogger. And I recently started my blog and business, Be Out the Box, in an effort to kind of change the narrative around disabilities, as well as expose the gaps in the community around accessibility, and also celebrate progress and innovation around solutions to some of the gaps around accessibility and making sure that the community is accessible and just, everyone can get to where they need to go and do what they need to do. So that's what I've been doing.
Awesome. And Brandee, tell us how you got started. It's like, why is this a personal passion for you specifically?
Okay, so yeah, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis back in 2007. And so, MS is actually, if you look at the whole umbrella of disabilities, the list of disabilities is on the list. But MS can be one of those that sometimes, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term invisible disabilities, where, someone may have, like, it could be mental health or some other type of disability that you can't see. So people think it's not a thing, but it is. And so I guess in the beginning stages, my MS was an invisible disability because I might have some problems, but nothing you could really see. But in the recent years, I've started to have more progression. And so I'm having issues with my legs and, being able to get around the way I used to. So with that, I use a wheelchair when I go out and a walker at home. And so it's been a progressive thing that's happened over the last few years. And with that, I changed how I just kind of navigate my experience in the community when I go out. And I have to always share this story with a lot of people, but particularly with you, since your primary audience is women and women's empowerment. I think the biggest shift for me was when I had my first gynecology appointment after I had started to experience more mobility issues. And it just opened my eyes. I couldn't turn back from that. Like, just knowing, like, I when I had my appointment, it was like, what do I do? Like, how am I going to get on the table? Or, how's the nurse going to respond to me? How's the doctor going to respond to me? And I almost wanted to cancel my appointment, actually. But I called the nurse and I asked her, like, how do you guys handle this? I don't know how much experience they had with it, but it worked out the first time. And they didn't have like an adjustable table the first time and that sort of thing. And now they do. So with that, though, I just kind of learned to, it changed my approach to how I go out and how I plan. And I started to think about, like, it's not just me. I'm not the only person that's going through this. And as a public health professional, particularly thinking about the doctor's office, I'm like, this is really important. Like, doctors need to think about this. And how are people going to, like, any doctor, let alone a gynecologist, where you don't necessarily want to go anyway, and navigating these experiences? So I wanted to get more involved in that. And I had been having like a kind of like a pull for quite some time. Like, I felt like God was always prompting me to be more transparent about having MS and some of the issues that I might be facing. But because it was invisible, I was able to be like, oh yeah, well, I don't really have to talk about it. What for? What do people need to know for? Why this? That sort of thing. But as things progressed, I'm like, okay, I can't hide it anymore. And there are things that I need to do and to, like, make sure that people are aware, because I want to see some changes, because this is just not okay that people have to maybe go places where it's not accessible, or go to a doctor's office that doesn't have adjustable tables and that sort of thing. So that's what prompted me to get involved as a disability inclusion advocate.
Wow. Brandee, I mean, you and I talk all the time, literally all the time. So I know your story and I know how you got here. And you're right. When I first met you years and years ago, we used to travel together a lot for work and business. So we were both constantly on the go. And I had no idea that you had this diagnosis, because you're right. you had no, as far as I could see physically, any signs or symptoms. And eventually, of course, it got to a point where there were some signs and symptoms that were occurring. And that's when, of course, you started to talk about it more and more. And I find it fascinating the more I get to know you and the more that you have brought me into a deeper awareness around being a disabilities advocate and disabilities inclusion advocate. It has really opened my eyes. I literally, where I live, I live in a kind of a downtown area, and parking is everywhere. But only recently did they put parking for persons with disabilities, like an actual handicap parking in areas that are right in front of restaurants. I mean, and it was something I hadn't thought about until I saw them finally put it in. I'm like, wow, what were people doing before?
That's
Where were
interesting.
they parking?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And then another thing that I notice sometimes, even with the parking lots, is the part, like I know a lot of times people they assume that the disability parking is going to be like the closest parking spot, but it's not always. Sometimes it's like really far away, or I don't know, people a lot of times people don't pay attention to like the little curb cutouts and things like that, or they pay attention to it when they're moving boxes and they have like the little lift and they're trying to get in, or a stroller, a baby stroller. But yes, there's also wheelchair users use them. A lot of times though, the disability or the ADA or handicap parking might be down here, but then you have to go all the way to the other side to get up the little curb cutout to get, onto the little curb to go into the shopping plaza or whatever. It just makes no sense to me. And these are kind of things that I want to talk about. And like you said, a lot of people aren't aware. I wasn't aware or didn't really think about it, but now I can't unsee it. I have to deal with it. Whether or not there ever becomes a cure for MS or anything like that is still something that I've lived through and it's important to me. And I feel like with every story, every time I share, people are learning more and more. And so with that, that's how change occurs. And so that's why I started to do what I do.
Yeah. And I think it's so important because there are so many women, and I'm sure some of them follow me, that do have a disability. And some disabilities are cognitive, but some disabilities are also physical. And of course, we have emotional disabilities. So I think there's so many different categories of disabilities, and you really don't recognize them until someone in your family is dealing with an issue, a close friend or a close relative, or you yourself might be dealing with the issue. And I know, Brandee, you and I have talked about, of course, we talked about the experience that you had at your gynecology appointment, but you have had other experiences that kind of made me think, wow. And you being in this world, you've talked to other women who have also had severe experiences because of issues with being in a wheelchair or trying to get places on a bus. Can you go into a little bit deeper or some of the experiences that you've talked to, whether it's yourself or other women, where you have experienced other issues dealing with disability?
So one of the things that I have been dealing with or have dealt with is around, like, I guess, stigma, particularly around even like having children, right? And you have a disability. So I remember upon just my diagnosis, and at that time, I still, I wasn't using a wheelchair. I wasn't having any like mobility issues. I was having like tingling in parts of my body, different things like that that would come and go. So nothing that people could visibly see. But my neurologist, like just straight from the jump, he was kind of like, I think I was only like around 27-ish years old or so. He's like, something about, like he has had all these thoughts about whether or not I should have a child, because you wouldn't be able to care for the child, or you have a child, but then would you be able to get around and play with them, that sort of thing. And so he already kind of had all these thoughts in his head around what he felt somebody with MS should do, and then and how that would progress. And I would be lying if I said that didn't stick with me, because it did. And then as time progresses, then I started having, physical issues. I actually recently had a male nurse tell me, I asked him about like just my medication and, how that might, if someone wanted to get pregnant, how that types of thing would impact the pregnancy or the baby. And he's like, having a baby with a disability, that's tough. Having a baby is tough anyway, right? Having the disabilities is tough. But that's not even what I asked you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, just people already just kind of imposing their judgments or their thoughts on you. That's something that I think we all deal with, but definitely people with disabilities deal with. And so that's a struggle for me sometimes, because I mean, those are more people probably can feel me with that, because I like, it's about children. But that's, I get on a regular basis, I can go try to get my eyebrows done, and people are like, oh my God, what happened to you? And it's like, they don't know me. Like, why are you so dramatic about it? And what do you mean, what happened to me? So it's like this whole thing where people feel like they have a right to just tell you what they want to tell you, or have whatever judgments or thoughts about your life. They want to know your story. And sometimes I just want to go out unbothered. I just want to go, I might, yes, I mean, I've had to, this is an ongoing thing for me too. I have to think about, I know what I used to do and what I can do now. And not that I can't do the same things. It just takes a lot more planning. And so, I might have really worked myself up and geeked myself up to go out today. And then I'll go outside, and the first thing someone is like, oh my God. And you're like, I don't want to talk about this today. I just want to get my groceries, just do my brows and let me go, that kind of thing. So it is a thing that happens a lot. And, of course, just access, going to restaurants and things like that. And whether or not it's going to be, easy breezy getting in and out of the restaurant. And okay, Tiffany, I'm sorry. I can go on and on about the public bathrooms, right? Because none of us like those anyway. But I've seen baskets in the middle of the handicap stall. I've seen, just the whole battle of people using them that may not need them. I mean, again, I don't know, like people may have balance issues or something. I can't just visibly say that people might not need the handicap stall, but people tend to use them. There may be other stalls available, but that's the only one I can use if I'm using my wheelchair that day. And so then I may have to wait, just like in a long line. And it's just, the whole thing's just, like I said, awareness, and people don't think about, because we tend to think about ourselves first, right? And then also with the disabilities, we don't see a lot of people, like there are a lot of wheelchair users and people who use walkers and canes, of people of different ages, but they don't go out in the same way because it's just not conducive to them. So if people don't see it, they don't think about it. And so they don't think it's an issue.
Wow. I mean, that everything that you just said, I want everybody to just sit on what she just said. First of all, when you talked about the male doctors and male nurses, it's like, how do you know what I can and cannot do? You yourself cannot carry a child to begin with. So how do you know how it feels as a woman to give birth, but also as a woman with a disability to give birth? And then you don't know the help that I have at home. You don't know my
Exactly.
circumstances. So you're right. I think we could talk about that for days. Just this idea of people, imposing their stereotypes and their beliefs on you based on what they see in front of their eyes and what they already think about you. So that's number one. So I feel that frustration
Right.
because that has happened to me dealing with something totally different, but in the medical industry. And then, like you said, when I think sometimes some of the cities that we used to travel to for work, New York and, Chicago and some of these large cities that are really old. So, of course, you go into these restaurants that have been there for 20 or 30 years, and the bathroom is downstairs in the basement with no elevator access. Things like that they probably don't even realize, like, part of the reason you don't see a lot of disabled customers is because they already know that they can't get around in your
Right.
establishment.
Right. And actually, the quick story about our hometown, Detroit, Michigan.
Just a quick note, everyone. We're both from Detroit.
When I went to home to visit a couple years ago to downtown Detroit to get some wings or something, and it was an old building, and there was no ramp, or it was, you had to go up a couple stairs to get in. It was a very old building. It was packed and everything. So it wasn't even a lot of space if you did have the wheelchair to maneuver. Luckily, I have a very strong husband. And also, luckily, I am kind of just, adamant about going where I want to go. But so he unfortunately had to pick me up the stairs, which actually, let me back this up. That's actually, embarrassing and demoralizing for some people. They don't want to go through that, and they shouldn't have to go through that. And this was a couple years ago where I just like, oh, well, I don't want to inconvenience the people I'm with. So even though I can't easily get into this place, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get in there, right? I'm kind of now on a different mind shift where I'm like, if it's not conducive for me to get in there, then I guess you don't want my business. And it's not for me to go in. And I want to put up a bigger fight around it because it's not okay. And in this whole environment that we're in, where the trend is everybody's DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, the voice of people with disabilities needs to be on the table. And regardless of whether I want to, rock the boat for everybody else. It's like, so, but at that time though, still, I did talk to the, I don't know if it was actual owner or manager about it, and saying, cause I've seen like videos where people had like a temporary ramp that they can put down for customers. And, even if it wasn't built in or something like that. So especially for this type of building, because it wasn't like a whole flight of stairs. It wasn't like 5 or 10 stairs. It was just like 2. They're, the old school though, they were kind of big, but still they could have put the temporary ramp down so I could get in and then put it away. So we did talk about that, and people need to do more. It's like 1 in 4 people have a disability, right? And under the disability umbrella, there are tons, mobility is my lane, but we have hearing impairments, vision impairments, all kinds of things like that. But even still, I just feel like it impacts way too many people for us not to be considered when buildings are built, whether they're old or not, just making some different accommodations for that.
Absolutely. And, coming from a public health background, you and I know, when it comes to health, environmental, environmental structures impacts health, and
Yeah.
impacts health when we say environmental structures, how neighborhoods are built for walking. If are there parks nearby where children can play? So when it comes to persons with disabilities, like you said, when they're building a new construction site where it's going to be a work play area, when I used to live in Atlanta and they were constantly building, that's something that needs to be on the table, like you said, for inclusion when it comes to just environmental structures, making sure that there is access being built into these projects when it comes to new condos, parks, restaurants having those types of availability. And I think because you and I have worked in public health, we are so passionate about these types of topics. But when you talk about, a business or the business world or an owner of, land or real estate, that might not be something that they even think about. So that's why I love that you are so passionate about being a voice for this particular population, so that the business world and built environment can also know, like, this is important for our health and our well-being.
Yeah, health, well-being, quality of life. I'm not, I feel, I don't know, like, they have like these millennials, boomers, or whatever. I never know quite where I fall, but in my mind, I'm still fairly young. I have a lot of life to live, and I don't want to stay home all the time, So
Right.
I want, part of my quality of life and my well-being is to be able to go out and do things like that. I'm not ready to resolve myself to just being home. I mean, it is frustrating, and I do have to plan and, like I said, motivate myself sometimes to get up and just do it. But it shouldn't be that big of a battle, especially in 2021, given all the technology we have, the tools we have, and people do. We saw, if nothing else, within this last year with the pandemic, people do what they want to do. A lot of jobs won't even let people work from home, disability or not. But this past year, people made accommodations to make it happen. So I know that people can do the things that they need to do when they have to do them or they want to do them.
Absolutely. And Brandee, just with all of this, everything that you've been through, all of your experience, what has given you the courage to really step out here and start talking about this more and more? Like, how did you build up your confidence personally to start becoming a disabilities inclusion advocate?
So it actually just kind of like an ongoing thing, because I promise you, when I say like every other week I talk myself out of it, but back into it, it is a thing. Because for me, I just like, why do I have to tell people? Like I say, I was feeling the pull from God for a while that this was something that needed to be shared, and that I had stories to tell, I had experience, and given just my background professionally as well as personally, this would be something that I could maybe have some type of impact. And so for me, it's just a lot of prayer and just trying to just go for it, like little bit at a time, like not, and also not comparing myself to other people. Cause I see like platforms where people have like all these followers, they're posting every day, they're doing all these things. And so for me, it's like, well, I have my own story. I have my own journey. And so just going at it a little bit at a time, and just, that kind of thing. And then also I named my business Be Out the Box, or B for Brandee, but also just not allowing people to confine me or to put me in a box, including myself. Just I don't want to set parameters and boundaries just because of the limitations that man maybe has set, And so that's one of the things that I had to work through. And so, yeah, with me, it's just kind of just a daily thing because there are times where I'm like, why did you write that story? Who cares? But I know that people care, and just reaching that right audience and just making sure I push forward on that.
I love that, Brandee. And I think that's every woman, whether you have a disability, whether you don't have a disability, whoever you are, sometimes stepping into your calling is something that takes practice on a daily basis. It's being intentional. And that's one thing that I talk about with a lot of my clients when it comes to empowerment in general. Empowerment is not something that you're just born with. It's something that you have to be intentional about, and you have to do it every single day. Waking up, stepping into that feeling and that intention of this is what I'm going to do. So that is so motivating and inspiring for, I'm sure, a lot of women watching this. Now, can you tell our viewers, like, clearly you are very confident. I always, as we worked together over the years and got to know each other, I always felt that you were confident and courageous and bold, and clearly highly skilled in your professional experience as a public health consultant. But what, going through all of this stuff and your journey, what can you tell women that are watching this when it comes to how to motivate themselves to keep going when times get tough? What is one message that you can give to them to help them keep
Good
going?
question. It is kind of a journey. Just making sure, because we get so many messages that tell us different things, and we kind of have to make sure we learn how to block those all out and just focus on yourself. But I think I would say just starting by knowing your own, accepting yourself, right? No matter whether you have a disability or not. I think women, we need to take more time to just accept where we are, what we have, and learn our value and put that forward, so that we can, go out and do what it is that we need to do. And as far as confidence goes, I would say just taking it one step at a time. So for me, it's just more about just setting small goals and things that I know I want to do, and like, okay, and then it builds. So you do one thing and you feel good about it, and you build on to the next, and you go to the next level, you keep going. And also, one of the most important things I probably should have started with is surrounding yourself by positive people, and people who give you the energy and feed you. Not that you're like leeching off of them, but just like they can feed into your life and give you the love and support that you need. Because if they drain you, then you're not going to have anything left for yourself. You're not going to give yourself grace or do anything it is that you need to be doing, like to move forward and give you confidence. But I know it's so funny because this is a hard question for me, because my husband and I, we go out sometimes, and he's like, "Oh, they were looking at you, that person was looking, they were, I wonder what they were thinking, maybe because they think you look young and you're in the wheelchair, blah, blah, blah." And a lot of times, I just kind of put the blockers on when I go out. And I don't really, not always, but a lot of times I just try to if I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to the movies, this is what I want to do. I don't care what you're doing. I don't want to, I can't do it. I can't deal with people. Now, unfortunately, when the people do come in my face and start asking me questions, I have to deal with that. But I've been really, I feel like they're also just my upbringing. I just been really fortunate to have like my mom and dad who just like kind of always just instilled like my value and importance. And I know, unfortunately, everybody does not have that. And so I don't know. I just always, I have like lots of different verses and passages and things that I read, just trying to make me, to pump me up and encourage me, because we need that. And again, just getting rid of the toxic people or the people who try to bring us down.
So, Brandee, what is the biggest motivational message that you can tell the women who are watching this right now when it comes to, going through tough times and trying to move forward? What's a message that you can give to them?
Well, I would just tell women to not to be funny, but be out the box, actually. Just to not, I have to use be out the box. It's not, it's a statement we hear all the time. People think out the box, think outside the lines, that kind of thing. But really, what I mean by this, though, is to actually move. It's a movement. It's not just you sitting there thinking differently, but actually being different. And so, with that, I would ask women to do something different than they did before. If you get knocked down, what did you do wrong in that situation, or what could have been done differently or improved? And do something different. Do something that you might not have done before. So live out differently. Be outside the lines. Be out the box, and don't let anyone, even yourself, confine you to just the standard or whatever you've been doing before. That's what I say.
I love that. That's such a powerful message because so many of us need to hear that, especially right now with the coronavirus. for some of us, we were forced to be outside the box. We were forced to
Yes.
do things differently. And if you haven't done anything differently, start.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Brandee, for those words of encouragement. I think that is something that women, especially, we really, when we are together, when it comes to positivity and are able to be in a place where we can encourage each other, we really can help each other change our lives and just motivate each other, like you said, just to keep going.
Mhm.
So I hope everyone got so many nuggets of wisdom out of this. Brandee, for those who want to follow you, where can we follow you? How can we contact you?
Yeah. So my website and blog page is b-outthebox.com, or you can find me on Instagram at b_outthebox. And so either way, I'll be available through both of those platforms.
Wonderful, wonderful. And everyone, I will make sure to put all of Brandee's information below in the description for Be Out the Box. And you can contact her, especially if you are a person that is passionate about public health and public health when it comes to disabilities inclusion. Brandee, thank you so much for being with us. And as always, we will be talking soon. Everyone, you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you.
Thanks, Tiffany.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.